Hey guys, Ed Haynes here to talk to you about the new training block for the S&C Fitness group. Now, firstly, we're going to change up the format a little bit this time. Typically, we do a big old introduction, primarily for newcomers coming into the group. We're now just going to get straight into the nitty-gritties of our training program. I'm going to do that in two ways. We're going to start by reviewing the results from the last training block, and then we're going to talk about what we have coming up. So, first and foremost, let's talk about the last training block. We've just finished a 4-week intensification phase. Now, typically when we talk about intensification, we're referring to heavier loads, less focus on structural balance, higher intensities with our weight training, more complexity in our energy system or our conditioning pieces. Now, when we move into an accumulation cycle, which is our next cycle, we're basically thinking about the opposite. So we're thinking about higher repetitions, lower intensities with regards to our weight training protocols, less complexity in our energy system pieces. So we had a couple of tests in our last training block to conclude the four weeks. First and foremost, we had a squat, clean, and push press. Now, some awesome results here. Actually, 70% of all our fitness folks who logged results all hit a PR. That's awesome to see, guys. Basically, it means that the training stimulus is moving us towards our goals. Secondly, we had a clean grip deadlift, 5 rep max, or it was more like a tough set of 5. That's basically set some new averages for our fitness group. So now our average male is deadlifting 115 kilograms for a set of 5, and that's not touch and go. So that's outstanding, guys. Females, we're averaging 60 kilograms for a set of 5. So typically when we compare, if we compare male averages to our female averages, male averages are a little bit higher on the deadlift. Definitely for both groups, it's still a priority. The goal is to get as strong as possible whilst bringing up all the other elements of fitness. So we're just going to keep tabs on that lift and make sure that it's moving up and moving towards our goal of being as strong as possible. The next training phase, we are 1 week into it. I apologize for being late with our videos. This should come out the start of the week, start the training block, I should say, and this will not happen again. So serious apologies, no excuses. We're in week 2 of an 8-week training phase. The focus is now accumulation work. So just to repeat what I said a second ago, less focus on heavy lifting, more focus on high repetitions, which means that the intensity of the weight training bout is going to be slightly less. In particular, we're going to focus more on unilateral strength, so kind of working single arm, single leg work. And for you guys, in terms of your application to training, less focus on just trying to lift heavy, more focus on trying to think about form and addressing perhaps some of those imbalances and getting as much blood flow into tissue. We're basically looking at kind of increasing muscular size rather than density in this training block. We're going to split that 8 weeks into 2 4-week bouts. This first 4 weeks is going to be even more generalized, and when I say even more generalized, it's going to be even higher in terms of volume, even less intense in terms of weight training, and even simpler in terms of movement selection in our conditioning pieces. After the first 4 weeks, weeks 5 to 8, we're just going to intensify everything a little bit, but we're still going to keep an emphasis or a focus on accumulation work. How your week is going to be split up: Mondays, we're going to continue to work on the clean and the variations of the clean, but you're going to notice that's coming after squatting. So we put cleans as a priority on a Monday for a long time. We're now putting cleans after squatting because we feel that squatting is actually more a priority in terms of developing strength there. So we want you to still seek mastery and craftsmanship in the clean. That's why it's in there. But you're going to notice the volumes are going to be slightly higher and the intensity or the weight selecting is going to be lower. On Tuesdays, we're working on some overhead pressing absolute strength. We haven't done that in a while. We've done a lot of push pressing or split jerking on our in our program for the fitness guys, so it's important we restore some strength there. And then we're going to continue the theme of aerobic threshold intervals. So when we talk about aerobic threshold, typically we're working at kind of 85 to 90% high intensity work with a less than complete recovery. So a very easy way to think about it is like a 1-to-1 work to rest ratio. You're working for a minute, you're resting for a minute. Now we're going to keep these aerobic threshold sessions a little bit more varied than it has been in the last block. So typically in the last block we were working a lot just with couplets, simple couplets and triplets. So kind of 2 movements, hit it hard, rest, repeat. Here we're going to add some more variance and complexity to it. Wednesdays, as you know, is your rest day. Thursdays, we're going to basically keep our A and B work is ensuring that we're getting touches on upper body pushing, upper body pulling, lower body squatting or knee flexion, and lower body hinging. All right, so we're going to make sure that we always hit those 4 planes of movements, but we're just going to keep the exercises fairly varied. So typically what you'll see is for a couple of weeks, there'll be minimal variance in terms of the exercises. And then the next 2 weeks after that, we'll start to increase or just change up the exercise stimulus, but the repetitions may not change that much. You'll notice that we often pair an upper body exercise with a lower body exercise. The reason for that is we get what we call metabolic defect, an increased metabolic effect, because essentially we're shunting blood from the upper body to the lower body, the upper body to the lower body. And this is something, a protocol that we call peripheral heart action. And the more peripheral heart action we get with our training, increased metabolic effect of the training, essentially more calories we're burning whilst simultaneously building muscle. Happy days. And you're going to finish those Thursdays with some mixed modal aerobic threshold work. So again, kind of higher intensities with incomplete rest, but we're going to keep this a little bit more simple in terms of the complexity of the movements. Fridays with deadlifting. We have just said that deadlifting is still a priority for the fitness group. Again, keeping that fairly varied. We're staying with a clean grip deadlift for now, but we might start to evolve that into different variations of deadlift over the weeks. You're going to be doing some shoulder to overhead work on a Friday. Again, keeping the weights lighter. A lot of us, for the first time, have been exposed to the push jerk in this phase. Push jerk is another variation of how to move a barbell over your head. It is a little bit more technical. It does require a little bit more in terms of movement quality and movement variance and just general overhead flexion mobility. So if you are struggling with that, keep the weight light for now. Get your head or wrap your head around learning the movement and seeking proficiency. If you are feeling like you're tight and just struggling to get into that catch position, we have tons of resources on our YouTube page to help kind of address those. And if you're lost and don't know where to start, just simply typing into YouTube in general, movement tools or mobility pieces for tight shoulders, there's a ton of resources there that you can access. Saturdays, we're going to continue to focus on those longer aerobic days. It's going to be a combination of individual workouts, partner workouts, team workouts. We do want to ignite some fun back into your training. That's really important. So we kind of keep that Saturday as more of an open day. Some concluding comments for the fitness group. Warm up and movement prep, really, really, really important. If you're following our program remotely, you do probably have more time to kind of move through these. We will evolve these movement prep pieces kind of every 4 to 8 weeks, but typically the stimulus in that movement prep is specific to the actual session itself. I think just moving into the actual training itself is probably not enough to bulletproof your body. At the end of the day, the goal is to be doing this the next 1, 2, 5, 10, 20 years. The rate of perceived exertions. I've had a few people ask about the RPE that you often see in the note section. Now, RPE stands for rate of perceived exertion, and pretty simply put, we put that on a scale of between 1 to 10. So 1 being not very challenging and 10 being the most challenging. So if we assigned an RPE to, let's say, a weight training piece or an energy system piece, it's basically your own perception of how difficult it was. Now, 10 out of 10, really we want to reserve a 10 out of 10 lift or a 10 out of 10 energy system piece for when we're testing something. Now, we know that we don't test all that often. Most of our time is spent training and accumulating good quality repetitions. So if we put an RPE of something like a 7 or 8 out of 10, it really means that there should be no compromise of form, and we should have more repetitions in the tank if we were asked to do so. So just kind of an easy way to kind of think about it. If it's a 10 out of 10, you really shouldn't have any more to give than that. Next, just a kind of a general reminder for the fitness group, we'll always talk about this, how to move from fitness to performance. First and foremost, it's really important you understand the differences between the groups and the training stimulus. The fitness group, we're not necessarily trying to prep you guys for any sport in particular. We're trying to get you guys to be generalists, which basically means we want you to be really good at everything. So the sport of CrossFit in particular is not a priority for you guys. Now, if your goals change and you do want to perhaps pursue competing within the sport of CrossFit, then naturally the performance program would be your next step. Now, if you decide that that is something you want to pursue, we do have a list of prerequisites. Most of them are strength and movement based that we want you to be able to meet to ensure that the stimulus in the performance program is right for you and that you're going to progress and not feel like you're plateauing or not progressing the way you want. If you are that person, guys, and you are training at Coastal Fitness, just got to reach out to one of the coaches and we'll take you through that protocol. If you're following remotely, I know you do have the freedom to choose whatever you please. It is really important that you are sticking to one training program because it evolves week on week. If you start to pick and choose or cherry pick between different programs, you're just not going to get the overload stimulus that we want. So if you are in that position where you think you might want to change programs, first and foremost, make sure your goals are aligned. Secondly, reach out to myself or any of the coaching team and we'll send you through the prerequisites just to make sure you're right for that group. The very last thing, guys, just generally stay on top of your movement mobility work. You can never do enough of that kind of stuff. Basic places to start is just use things like social media and YouTube resources to explore ways to maintain things like joint integrity and looking after your tissues and muscles, especially if you work in a high stress environment and you're coupling that with this type of training. The body can get very run down and burnt out quite quickly. Other things are things like ROMWOD. So where you're taken through kind of like a guided stretching or meditation session. Yoga is great. Manual therapy, where you're having someone work on adhesions through your tissue. That's really important. Or basically just doing your own prescribed foam rolling, release work and stretching. Guys, that's it from me. Hopefully you find these videos useful. Again, I apologize for getting this out late to you. Thank you very much.